Good afternoon, class. How are you? Hi. Hope you had a good week off. Enjoyed it. And hi, Ethan. And we'll come back. We'll wait a few seconds until everybody join in, and we'll take it from there. So, how was the a week off? Was it good? Okay. I hope you enjoyed your week. Anyway, probably let's start the chapter, and still we have some students are coming, but that's okay. We can manage that too. Now, in the last class, we were talking about mostly about type of companies that that you might run to, or you're thinking of establishing it, for example. And we spoke about sole proprietorship, and that's the probably the entry level. Most of the people would love to, establish their own business. They would do that. And then you have the partnership, and we spoke about different type of partnership. What things is what should worry you? We spoke about the advantage and the disadvantage of partnership, sole proprietorship, and corporation. And what should you, when you're planning to establish a company, what things that you should worry about? And also we spoke about this insurance companies who can really help you in this matter of minimizing the risk that you're going to take, and probably some type of contract. But in this chapter, the coming chapter, which is chapter 7, now we will be mostly talking about the organization itself, how it looks like. And also we'll talk about if the organization is flat or not flat. Also, and okay, that was good, huh? That's good. And we will talk about, whether the organization flat or not, and why is that? Why they building it that way? And hopefully, the second half we can present you with the chapter 8, which is we will be also presenting a solution for Oracle, where I do believe that there is two ways of understanding, especially industries or department. One is really working in that department and picking up things while you're working there. And the other way is really looking at the tier 1 solutions like SAP or Oracle or probably Great Plain. These are the ones who will really take into consideration different functionalities of that department, and also would take into consideration the workflow, the approval flow, all these things, because the softwares will accommodate the activities of the company. As I said, it's nice to have 1 week off. So, but before we do that, I would like to show you a video, and probably some of you have tried that. And once you've seen the video, please, after the video, let me know if you have tried the food there. And if it's good, do you recommend that food for me or not? So just let me play the video, and you know which company I'm talking about. Because I always go beside that company, but I never, try it. So let's see how it's, you know, um, their food probably in general. So just give me a second here.
Every organization needs a structure that clarifies the role each member performs. This helps everyone understand who reports to who and who is accountable for what results. There are different types of organizational structures, and selecting the right one depends largely on a business's environment, strategy, size, technology, and culture. Freshii, the fastest growing restaurant franchise in the world, is one company that is pushing the status quo and thriving because of its unconventional, flat, and progressive organizational structure. Freshii is a fast casual restaurant franchise that has been described as the new generation of quick service dining. Freshii offers healthy, customizable food options such as burritos, wraps, soups, salads, and frozen yogurt. It was founded in 2005 by CEO Matthew Coren and has since expanded to hundreds of locations worldwide.
Freshii started when a 23-year-old had a dream to change the way the world eats. He was able to grow the brand by finding like-minded franchise partners who shared his dream and shared his values, and then also by building a really strong, passionate team at his head office. And together, all these people work to define who Freshii is and what the culture is of the company.
Freshii headquarters uses a flat organization structure where everyone has ownership of their particular area of expertise. This removes excess layers of management and improves the coordination and speed of communication and project execution.
We actually all work in one shared space, and we stand around one big open table. So it's very collaborative and very open, and Matthew, the CEO, and all our executive team are right there in that space with everyone. And we have about 7 key departments. So we do have department heads, but then within each of those departments, people are really owning significant pieces of the business.
Having a flat organization means that the Freshii team runs lean with no junior positions. Every employee is considered a partner and a stakeholder in the company, figuratively and literally. All Freshii employees hold stock in the publicly traded company and therefore have a vested interest in Freshii's long-term success.
So we really feel that we empower our employees by giving them full ownership of their role. So that's not to say that they aren't collaborating with their peers and working with those around them, but for their area, they own their business from project ideation, research, and then all the way through to execution and launching it and then measuring the results out in the field. And because of this structure, they get to see a project through from ideation, brainstorming, research, all the way through to execution.
The flat organizational structure works well for Freshii and its passionate workforce. The Freshii staff thrives on being trusted and empowered to make quick decisions.
People get growth and opportunities from a business perspective at Freshii that they wouldn't have in any other organization. And that's just due to our flat structure and really the scope of the responsibilities that we give to our employees. The team really brings to life what Freshii is all about, which is living an energized life, driven to be better. So we're a competitive group of people, and we do these monthly fitness challenges. We go and we spin together, and we do run clubs together. We have fun together.
Freshii is a franchise-based business model, and it is imperative to them that their franchises are also in line with the values and vision of the company.
So we found that our most successful restaurants are those where the team really does feel empowered and where that store leader takes a look at the team and says, what are the areas that you are really passionate about, and how can we get you involved in that in the store?
The flat and lean organizational model of Freshii fits well with their corporate culture. Freshii prides itself on being comprised of competitive, passionate people, driven to make the company great, and their values, environment, and organizational structure reflect that.
So, anybody tried Freshie before? Because I go there beside it and I'm not sure should I go in or not because I never tried it before. Anybody did? Okay. Any advice? Okay. So probably I will try it and I'll let you know next week about the Freshie. But it seems to me like there is something is happening with subways. Did you notice recently what's happened with Subway? In Australia, I believe they found out like more than 10% of their bread is mixed with the sugar. So now they're, so saying this is not a bread, this is a sugar, which is pretty bad for Subway. And it seems to me that Freshie is kind of competing with these guys also in a sense. And probably you guys have you seen this big ad happening against also Subway that their tuna is not a tuna? Anybody remember that? Okay. Have you tried Subway? Okay. Benny did. Wonderful. Uh, Karamji did. I did. So you tried Subway, but what about Freshie? What do you eat in the Subway usually? I used to like their tuna until I found out they say it's not a tuna. So it's like so Freshies are more costly. Oh, I see. I see. And but educate's good. But I too, I love their, I used to eat only tuna, but thinking it's really tuna sandwich. But they were saying it's tuna is not a tuna, and it's developed in the laboratories about the subways. So that's the reason I'm thinking of, yeah, that's what they said. And recently, last week, they said also in Australia, they took them to the court, and they said, and the court said because their food is their bread is more than 10% of its sugar, so it's not considered to be sugar and not considered to be bread. It will be a sugar, and that's interesting too. So I don't know, but I really enjoyed their food. I felt it's pretty healthy food, and Subways are Subways, but it's apparently there are all these things is happening there. So I will try Freshie and probably let you know next week. And I'll tell you about the pricing too of the Freshie, because I always pass beside it or go there and just beside the door and walk out. And it's like, what should I order? But no. So you're welcome. Um, and, I will do my studies on the website and see what things I can order from Freshie and then start, eating from Freshie instead of probably because I'm not a big fan of City Sup. I don't like City Sup at all. I don't find their food is pretty much. I tried it a few times, didn't like it at all. Anyway, so um, let's talk more about today's subject, and we will take it from there. Maybe later on, we'll talk more about Freshie or not. We don't know that. But We'll talk today about the subject, and also what we will do. We're also gonna hopefully this chapter, this hopefully the second half, we are gonna cover if we have time. If it's not in the next class, we will. I like it. I want to take you to understand how these ERP solution, the first tier, they call themselves first tier, are covering these requirements of any department or organizations, for example. So how they are covering the department of HR, it would be nice to see that. And here is a little story that I like to share it with you. And every year, when I was working, I was looking after IBM HR Access product, which is at that time was very sophisticated. And we had these oil companies who utilized a kind of a magic solution and integrated. If you have an IT background, probably you will know it. It's pretty much interesting. We managed to integrate an Oracle financial and IBM HR Access. And if you know the background of these two applications, IBM runs on DB2 and they use mainframe, and Oracle can be run on mainframe, but they use different database. So integration of these was pretty much challenging, but the client wanted to have something that they meet their requirement. And in that time, the Oracle HRMS was not able to meet the requirements. So they went with the Oracle Financial and they went with HR Access. Anyway, so every year we did an event in one of these countries, invited our 5 oil company clients, and they're wealthy and they pay really well for us. And it was, and the event, I think, was in Lebanon. As basically what we did is first I present the new what's coming in for IBM HR Access, and then we have a technical person to present, and we have a consultant present HR in general. But for some reason, there was some switch, and what's happened, the IT consultant came first. After me, I presented the upgrading and upcoming version and upcoming features and all these things. So the IT consultant stood there and start presenting competency management and the HR solution. Once he done, took him an hour or so, went down, and now the turn was for the HR consultant, which is we hired from outside, a third party, independent, from I think Ernest and Young or something like that. He stood up there and he said, guys, I have nothing to say. And we felt bad. He said, well, I cannot say anything because the IT consultant came in and said everything that I wanted to say. But the IT consultant, actually what he said, he talked about the functionality of the solution. He did not talk about the HR, but when he talks about the functionality and the flow and everything, it is exactly like what this consultant is going to put. And it happened that they're supposed to talk about competency management. So that when because they did not synchronize, the IT consultant, it was talking about the IT and talking about the pure HR consultant. So what I do believe is the fact that from there I realized one thing: there is two ways of learning about businesses, whether industries or department. One is really working in these industries or that department. So if you work for HR, after a while, you know what's HR all about. If you work for financial, after a while, you know what's in financial all about. The other option is really understand the first tier of softwares. because they are accommodating that. And once you run 3, 4 implementation involved in it, step by step, you understand what's the HR requirement, the workflow, the approval, the whole thing. And it's the same thing applicable for all the industries, whether you're talking department or industries. So what I thought today, after in the end, if we can manage it, I will present Oracle this time, not IBM, Oracle HRMS solution. What do they cover it and how they cover these requirements of management? And probably if we have time, if we don't have time, we will take it for a next class. But let's start with the chapter 7, and we'll take it from there. Just a second. And basically, let me know if you have any question. I'll be glad to answer it. But in the end of the chapter, we will ask a few questions. So I would like to see you proactive also in this field. So let's start. A firm's organization structure. What causing change or adjust the organization structure? We also need to explain how specialization and departmentalization are the building blocks of organizational structure. Further, we're going to distinguish between responsibility and authority and explain the differences in decision making in centralized and decentralized organization, because we heard a lot about centralized and decentralized. We want to know what's the difference between them. We're also going to explain the difference between functional, divisional, project, and international organization structures and describe the most popular form. You see, we do, most of you guys, I know you have worked professionally in some organization and you worked on a project. I know some of you did work on this project. Some of you probably gonna start working in the international organization structure because of your background, or you're working in a certain department. But we want to know, what's the difference? What's the company works this way? Why the company work this way or not that way? Why they have a flat rate, flat, chain of command, and why not they don't have sometimes non-flat chain of command? Once we understand that, we can accommodate that easily. In terms of organizational design these days, and also understand how the informal organization is different from formal organization. So organizational structure is a specification of the job to be done and how they are related. So each organization, whether a profit, non-profit, government, NGOs, which is non-profit ones, they belong not for the government, must develop a structure that meets its specific needs. Determine of organizational structure. First of all, we spoke earlier about the strategy, what's the purpose, and what's the mission of the organization. These are supposed to be clear for any organization. We also need to know the size, the technologies used, and the changes in the environment also. It may be carefully planned and developed as an organization evolves. Now, back to the subject. It's kind of, I remember that I used to work for United Way in Winnipeg, and our boss which is the CEO, where did not give us the updated mobile. So when I asked why we didn't get the updated mobile, because we were allowed to carry a mobile, uh, pointed to that. He said the donation when it's happening, and it was an NGO, non, non-government organization. He said, "Listen, um, we survive on donations, and we want more donation to give it to the needy people. And if you carry the high-end mobile, um, even if it's from your pocket, because we suggested that, okay, we can buy our own mobile, that's not an issue. But he said, listen, if even if you're going to buy it from your pocket, the high-end mobile, when the people who wants to donate comes in and see you carrying the high-end mobile, um, they gonna feel kind of suspicious that they are wasting their money and it's coming straight to our pocket and we don't get it in our pocket. So there is some kind of a structure on a and a command that told us to do it. So we were, simply, on a purpose, and we stayed simple because the more donation we get, the more we are able to help people. And if we look very shiny, that might affect the amount of, shiny, that might worries the donators that we are, consuming their money. So that's his philosophy of how he runs the business, but he was running it in a very flat organization in this case. Now, we heard of chain of command, which is about the organizational chart shows employees' position and the flow of decision-making power. And if you see here, for example, you would see kind of a board of director and then the president, and where we have different VP or vice president, which is they might be calling VP, CTO, or C-level, which is vice president of finance. And under that, maybe there is what you call a payroll manager, an accounting manager, and then VP for sales or vice president sales. And you find the national sales managers, and then you have what you call a different district sales managers. And then what you got is the VP for production, and there's a purchasing manager, plant manager, VP for a human resource, or um, C-level, a human resource, like a chief. When we say C, it means C-level means chief. And then you have VP marketing, vice president of marketing, or chief marketing. So these are levels. So sometimes you see me to that refer for a VP finance or chief financial officer, or VP sales or chief uh, sales officer. So when I say C level, it's not a C, it's a C letter. So start with their job title with a C, and probably you're gonna hear it outside. It's like a chief executive officer, probably on the top, and then you have chief technology officer, chief information officer, chief financial officer, chief marketing officer, and chief operating officer, which is a COO, something like that. So it might see as a VP or a C, uh, CTO, CIO, CFO, COO, Chief Operating Officer. And then you have what you call the management level. And then under the management level comes in the employees. Levels, and each one has its own under them, probably some kind of a management, and then comes in for the employees. So these are kind of the organizational structure. Now, we have something called specialization, which is a process of identifying the specific job that it need to be done, and designating the people who will perform that. So we specify what kind of a job needs to be done and who's supposed to do it. But then we have something called departmentalization or department, or making things into department. It's determining how tasks should be grouped together to make the workplace more efficient. As you see in the picture, each department probably is in charge of doing certain work. Now, this is what you call specialization and growth. Usually, small company has fewer employees and less specialization, or they are multi-skills. So they're not specialized in a certain things, might be specialized in a few things. The larger the company, the large companies become more efficient through specialization, and you have each person might be doing one type of task. Well, small company versus the large company, each one has its own benefit and side effect. Basically, there was a, as is my advice to you, there is a better chance for you to work for a small to medium-sized companies than the large, because it takes longer to be hired by a large companies. In the good part of a small to medium-sized companies, you will be exposed to more tasks and you will be able to do more functionalities. And then you can, once you have the hands-on experience, then you can select the field or the department or the type that you are really keen to take on and work on it. Now, in the large corporation, uh, how they become more efficient is because they are uh, getting people are more specialized in things, and that's another challenge. Because if you are being very, very specialized in doing certain thing, then you will be unable to acquire other skills, and you will be focusing on only that. Maybe you don't like it, maybe you like it, it's up to you. But when you're focusing in on one skill, it would be a challenging on a day by day to really redo the same thing. Some people they don't mind. I myself like to have multiple skills, and I enjoyed medium sized to small size companies much more. It's depend on how you think about it and how you approach to it in your life. But most likely, when you graduate, try to target the small to medium sized companies, especially the medium sized or small companies. They will be expose you to lots of hands-on experience within Canada and international, which is good for you. Now, as you see in the old days, in the Walt Disney, he was doing everything, including, drafting these things. Once the Walt Disney grew and became big, there were people specialized in a different departments, especially in animations. There is a people who their job is doing animation. In the old days, when he had a small company, he probably did it all. Now, in the department, by the way, I like that movie a lot. Departmentalization. It is a grouping jobs into a logic unit. And the reason you do that, because you want to increase efficiencies, and you do it through a divisions of labors. You might want to also have with this, it comes in the better control and coordinations. It's more easily monitored, when it's easily monitor the performance, and it's a profit center are accountable also. And we'll explain each one of them. Now, you see, once you go in a Walmart or any department store, you will see clothing according, for example, man section, children's section, female sections. and each one is a different in a different department. Now, the base of departmentalization could be a functional, customer, product, geographic, and process. As you see here as example of firm using multiple form of departmentalization, we have, according to the functional departmentalization, we have the geographical one, and we have the product. So as a functional, probably you will have a VP of finance, a VP of production, and a VP of marketing. Could be a VP of sales, and list goes on. That's according to the functional departmentalization. And then under that, you have what you call, could be a geographical, especially if the company has a multiple location. So we have probably one in Nova Scotia plant operating, one in Quebec, and one in Alberta. And after that, you will have, a similar consumer product, industrial product, under Quebec, consumer product, industrial product, and in Nova Scotia is done this way. I think you guys, when some of you heard of Tata or Tech Mahindra, these guys are working in that sense too. So, or probably you look at Ford, for example. In Ford is basically probably you have the VP of marketing and VP of production and finance in USA, but they do have a different geographical department also. They have one department, one here in south of Oshawa for Ford manufacturing, even for Toyota also, but for the Ford. And probably they have one in Europe, in Germany. So that's a geographical ones. And then probably the plant here in Oshawa, they have two products, and that's for the consumers, the cars and all these things, and they'll probably have their own industrial, like a big trucks or something like that. So it can be a whole combination of these together, like functional department, geographical, and project departmentalization. I think now you went through the assignment of the assignment, and you were aware that these departmentalizations, it's happening, but it could be a geographical or it could be a functional reason. Now, you might have functional, and a VP of finance has access to the finance of these locations. Now, the decision-making hierarchies, how the decision-making hierarchies, it need to be done because it defines who is responsible for making certain decision. And there is a 3 steps needs to be clear, is first assigning the task, performing the task, and then distributing the authority of it. So I guess you guys did that. When you did the group assignment, you just assigned the task and you distributed it. So these are the tasks, you assign them, and then you distribute the authority, who's supposed to correct things, who's supposed to rewrite it, and all these things. It's on a small group level, it happenings also. In the assigning the task is basically who is responsible and who have the authority. And responsibility is due to perform assigned tasks. So this department is responsible to do the assigned task. And there is authority is done within that department, which is power to make a decision to complete a task. Now what do we have, what you call the performing task? As we saw before, is assigning task, performing task, and then distributing authority. In the performing task, you do the delegation, assigning of a task, responsibilities, or authority to do a subordinate, and then you have some kind of an accountability. Definitely you have attached an accountability for it because you want to see or ask who has the liability of subordinate to complete the delegated task. So these are the process for the performing task, and these are the process for assigning tasks. So you do assigning tasks, and then you do a performing task also. Now, to speak about centralization and decentralization, before we need to understand as the company grows or hiring a new employees or bringing a new employees, probably some of you can bring some very good example from your older jobs. If you can recall it, please comment in your chatting area. I would be glad to read it and get into a conversation with you on that and understand better how this is happening. But it seems to me some of us, once we start working, because we start in an entry level, we're not aware of these issues. As we are start working more and more, and we are holding, for example, 2 or 3 different tasks, suddenly you will see that they are recruiting a new person and they are delegating part of your task to him or her because they see that you are being very busy in a certain, so they that's how they do that. And delegation of the other tasks, assigning these with already in the early stage is being established probably with the boundaries established within the line managers, talking to the HR department saying, okay, we need a person or we need somebody who can take care of these work. This is their responsibility. This is the deliveries. These are authority that we need to give to them in order for them to deliver their task. So you might be joining a company and you see that somebody is going to train you, and this person training you could be your supervisor or your coworker who is used to do two things or 3 things, and he's happy now. He is just outsourcing part of his work to you. So that's another way of, you probably mostly you've been through that. So let's talk about probably centralization and decentralization and why we do that. I mean, a company is just not just decide to centralize or decentralize. And you notice in a Freshie, they are decentralized. But then if you look at some other companies, they probably even the ministries of the government, they're all centralized. And these are reason for that. It's not just because they want to be that way or this way. As we spoke in the first the class, we said that there is kind of something called organizational, and they are some of them centralized and some of them decentralized, which is driven from centralization and decentralization. And distributing authorities is when it's the top manager reserve most of the decision maker right. That's called centralized or centralization. In the decentralization, the lower and the middle management level managers have some discretion in making the decision on their own. Now, don't make an error because there is some application that might help some decentralized organization. It's called DSS, but for the top managers, there is an application called ESS, which is okay. So I will write. Anybody knows what's a DSS and ESS? Have you used the DSS or ESS application? So I'm going to write it down, the name of it, DSS application versus ESS application. Anybody? guess. I don't care if you guess wrong. That's good. That's good also. And most likely you've been involved in that without knowing, especially the DSS. Any comment? Anybody worked with the DSS application? I'm pretty sure you didn't work with ESS application. Maybe in a project management you did. Okay. Sometimes. In the, I think I said the name of it, Decision Support System. That's a DSS, and something called Executive Support System. Now, most of the time, we want to decentralize many things. But will happen, there are vary in the decisions of employees. So what we do usually, if the decision is affecting the end result, we try to minimize the decision maker, if especially if is an entry level or entry level. So we kind of, I mean, you can see the ESS application is kind of a built-in questions. And today, probably, if you use, ESS is a majorly used for decision based on data, but not on a level, where ESS in a specific, the top level executive. Thank you, Asa. Yeah. If she's correct. The thing is like when you go to a bank and you're trying to open an account or apply for a credit card, or in the old days, or you have a check to cash, or all these things, you will see a teller person is making decision. And, you believe that they are making that decision. And then actually they are going through a DSS application. So there is certain questions pops up and she has to answer it, and then it tells what's they supposed to do. So that's exactly what Asa is saying. A friend of mine who worked in the U.S. Embassy in India in the immigration, he said there was a DSS application there that when a student goes and apply for a visa, there are certain questions are asked. And now it's also, there is a timing too. So when the immigration officer is asking you a question, he's timing you and he's looking that you answer within that time. So if it's taking shorter time or a longer time, that's probably is not good, it's a negative thing. So let's assume it says, why are you going to USA? And if you say, oh, I'm going for education to do my advanced diploma or something like that in the field of so, you got the answer. And that you get a full point. But if you come in and says, oh, my brother went there and he enjoyed the education and and you pass the time, you get a negative point. Although your answer was a very good answer, but you pass the time, and it's going to get you a negative point. And if you're saying, okay, I just want to go and try, that's a very short answer. Not only the quality of the answer, also the timing is taken effective. And it's funny thing, in this case, the DSS makes this decision for you. And sometimes you have a certain point that you get into a gray area. And that's when they will forward your application for probably the Department of State somewhere there to make that decision, if it's in a gray area. But if it's a pass or fail, that they will give you the answer right away. And probably now it becomes so effective, this application, when you apply for a credit card. Have you applied for a credit card? And you put your information, and it will tell you, we will tell you the answer in 3 minutes. So it's a process. It's a DSS application, and it's basically makes a decision on behalf of your, instead of a teller takes your information and puts it in, now you can do it personally, and it is processed. And if you're going to get a credit card right away, you get a message saying you've been approved for this amount. And if you are being rejected, or you're in a gray area, then somebody, a human, will be answering that. So that's kind of a DSS. But in ESS, executive system, it's built for the C level, the executive level. In what he's looking at all these applications like manpower or HR, financial, I don't know, the supply chain management application, warehousing, and balance them and put what if analysis. What if I increase the size of a warehouse? What if I hire more people? So the executive gets all these data moved up. So the DSS is all these information and rules built up and coming down, rules and regulation. And the entry level make these decisions. But the executive, it goes up, he's making the decision and puts what if analysis. So it also look like that an organization is being decentralized, but actually the application are helping so much, the DSS application, helping so much to perceive that the company is being decentralized. So this is, thank you, Asa, for your answer. So these are the difference between DSS and ESS. And I'm sure you applied for a credit card online or for something and you got the answer right away. That's a DSS application. We will talk about it also. DSS, decision support system. ESS is executive support system. What is the span of control? Is span of control, when you are a supervisor, it's about the number of subordinate that a manager is responsible for supervising. There might be a wide span and many subordinates, and there might be, if it's a specialized job, narrow span, very few subordinate. The more complicated the task require more supervision and a narrow span of control, because it's a complicated and you cannot manage everybody because it needs to direct input from the supervisor. So that's why some of the organization, you see them pretty much flat because it's kind of the task is pretty sophisticated. Like the, the legal department, the law office firms, the accounting, the chartered accounting firms, they do have a flat one. The IT, they also have the service, the consulting IT services. They also have kind of a flat one. And the reason, because the tasks are complicated. But if the task is straightforward, that's a different thing. And you would see a less span most of the time, not a span. Now, we always see that when a manager do not properly delegate tasks to subordinate, or when there are a disagreement about how much authority should be delegated, both manager and workers become frustrated. They want more delegation. He wants to run everything. And that both sides becomes kind of frustrated in that. Delegation might help in many cases, and centralizations might help in some cases. And For example, if we're looking at the law firm or a college or um, IT, we will see mostly, especially in the law firm, a flat organization, which is uh, there is a wide delegation is happening. Yet, on the contrary, in the army, you will see no. You will see there is a general, there is a colonel, the majors, and it's kind of a hierarchy, and there's not much delegation is happening there. Now, there is a three forms of authority. There's what you call a line authority, a staff authority, committee team authority, and the fourth one that uh, probably is not part of the organization, but you probably need to build it up for yourself, is called informational authority. We will talk about that, how it can help you to, allocate, for example, a job with the informational authority that you can build. We'll talk about that too. Now, guys, pay very good attention on the informational authority. Maybe we don't take it in regular day to day, but usually a person with information has a good authority. And you need to establish your informational authority. Once you can establish your informational authority, then you probably, the believers in you will follow you and will be doing things that you're supposed, if you're going to be a consultant, there's two things that's going to help you. Is first that the history of your company that you worked in or you're working in it, and the level of your informational authority and how you present that. You presented it earlier before the people listen to you. So if they feel that you know more than they do, then you presented yourself as an informational authority person. But here in the organization, the official one, there is a three of them. There's a line of authority, there is a staff authority, and there is the team authority, which is, or committees, um, which is mostly it's happening in the project management also. Now, in the line of authority, a direct chain of command indicated by a solid line in the organization chart. So direct chain of command is kind of called a line of authority. A staff authority, it's when a staff that advise, support the line manager, like, the HR, the financials, these are kind of a staff authority. I heard or saw it in some literature, front end and back end, but it's actually back end stand for a staff authority. Line authority is the ones who probably deliver. That's a different literature, but here you're going to look at a line authority. It is a direct chain of command, and a staff authority is a staff that advise, support, line manager, which is called support staff. Now, to make it clear for you, let's say there is a clerk equipment, and then you have the staff managers, which could be the engineers department, engineering department, and the human resource department, because they don't contribute directly. And then you have the line managers, which is made of truck division, fork and small earth movers division, and tool division. And these are three different things. And under, for example, here, the forks and small earthquake division, you have the painting, you have the assembly, sales, distribution, fabrication, material handling, and purchasing. IKEO will explain about this company, how they are operating in this way. Now, the committee and the team authority. Authority granted to committees work team or work teams, um, permanently or temporary. So there is what you call a steering a committee. There is a committee. There is a work teams. They have some authority that is done in a permanent style. I guess whomever worked with you guys, I mean, you guys worked in a project, you would see that there is a steering committee will look after implementation of that software or that services or something like that. And this steering committee will be ineffective and they make decisions until this project goes live and gets signed up. Dial or in temporary. Plan their work and complete the task independently. If you notice here that the business firms are increasingly using the team and allowing group of employees to plan and organize their own work within a minimum supervision. This contributes to employee empowerment. And when we do a group assignment, hoping we can, matching the outside market also. So it might be pretty much confusing for you when you start working and then uh, you sit with a group and you decide, you and your group, how you're going to deliver that task, when you're going to deliver that task, and then you take that to be approved by the management. And instead of what we got used to it is the management comes in and comes with the task and says, here's a task, you do this, you do that, you do that, and this is the time you need to do that, and this time you have to do that, and this time. It's kind of became reverse. Now the group sits together and says, okay, they want to get us, they want us to move from A to B, for example. How long is it going to take us? Who's going to do that? Where are we supposed to do it? Who's get the authority for doing these points, some point? And then you come up and go to your supervisor or your manager as a group or personal representing the group and says, here's what we're going to do. And then he gives his feedback or approves it for you. But it's done reversibly. You might in the beginning might be a little bit confusing, but then once you get used to it, you will like it so much. There is what you call functional structures, so because spoke about it. It's a unit are formed based on the job function. For example, a group of payroll, somebody, a part of the company will do a payroll. So according they are their functions, the payroll or the accounting or the national sales, according to the function that they are doing. And it's, you look at it, for example, here, what do you have? You have the board of director, the president, and the VP for accounting, for finance, which is under them is the payroll manager and the accounting manager and the employees there. And then you have the vice president for sales and national sales manager. And then you have every district a sales person. So then when you have something called the divisional structure, and the divisions operating as semi-autonomous units and a profit center. For example, it could be the division of products, certain product like makeup or perfume or cars, whatever, is according to the product that they produce, or customers or geographic, like the branch in Canada for it and a branch in US company. And they're also affecting the application that they might use in the organization, whether centralized, decentralized, driven, or non-driven. Now, the basic organization, you have what you call chief executive officer, which is that's part of the C-level, or the president, it could be a president or chief executive officers. And then you have under them the VP for consumers. We said according to the products or the customers or the geographic. And then you have the VP for consumers product. Then you have for the industrial product and health product. And each one has its own department and operating and finance, the same thing it's happening. There is a kind of a situation that you probably will say, oh, that's confusing, but it's happening a lot. Um, I was working located in Kuwait, and I told you that the company had around 28 offices in 22 countries. And because of so many branches, what you saw regional management. So we have the Levant region, which it's called Levant, like Lebanon, which has had a few countries under the Levant region, and then we have the Southern Gulf region, which was headquarters by Kuwait and the Saudis and Bahrain, Qatar, all these things. And then we had the African, the North African, and the Eastern African. So what happened is I was looking after a while on the corporate level, establishing the higher education solution. But then, I just felt so tired, so much stress. So I moved to the regional of Kuwait, just looked at the southern Gulf region, which runs in Kuwait. Now the headquarters also in Kuwait. But what happened is when the two telco clients of ours moved to Iraq, and they needed somebody to establish our branch in Iraq, and they nominated me. So they said, okay, you go to Iraq, you establish that, all these things. So I went there. But the funny thing, the Iraq country, it was named under the Levant region. So Levant is Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq region. But I was working in the Kuwait region. So when I went to Iraq, I wasn't transferred there. The accounting, the administration went that way. This person belonged to the Southern Gulf region, was borrowed by the Levant region, and he was put in a new development country, which is Iraq. And what got it worse is actually I was looking after higher education, but notice there's two telco companies. So they had to train me to understand better about the telco, to manage the whole branch in Iraq for telco implementation. So these issues also influence the payroll, influence the delegation, influence the centralization, decentralization. And if you don't work that way, it would not be a very flexible, because what will happen, they will say, okay, so should we fire Faisal from Kuwait region and rehire him to the Levant region, or what are we supposed to do? So the HR came and says, no, they borrow him for a few years, and the Levant region pay the Kuwait region, but he will be in that time reporting to the regional manager of Levant, but getting paid from Kuwait. And this becomes a little bit complicated, but that's the process for some of organization. So here, when you look at it, for example, there is different countries geographically, and could be a different product. So when I was working in Iraq, I was looking after the telco solutions. And we're probably gonna we brought somebody who looks after the banking solutions. So under them, there would be a marketing director, the operation and his team, and probably a finance who looks at that direct thing. It's a different mic. We will take shortly a break in 5 minutes. Be different. And lots of multinational, multi-production companies in the world, they act in that sense. Are probably a good example, Canadian Tire have two operations, one are running the Canadian Tire and one is running the credit card and the finance. And so like a bank, operates like a bank. And you can get the MasterCard of Canadian Tire. Now, there is other things that you would see it when you're joining company is a project organization, and it's used by organization with a new product opportunities or for specialized product, especially in the oil operation. When they go and explore oil, they are used in that sense. And it works even in the IT service providers like IBM, like ITS. They work in a matrix organization. The project manager and the regular line managers share the authority until the project is completed. Lots of it also done in the construction. And as you see here, the project, for example, the project organization structure is very useful in the construction project like the hydraulic generation station on La Grande River in Quebec. And the construction of the installation like this has a specific beginning and ending point. Once completed, the generating station become part of the traditional organization structures of provincial utilities. Anyway, let's see, in a project, usually these days they use a lots of a matrix approach. Now, so before we take a break, look at this example, the matrix approach. And this is happening, you could say, well, that's a special one. No, you can find that also in the hospitals, in the IT. Some of you guys worked in IT and know that. And in some position, you do something else. In the other position, you're doing something else. So you could be a project manager in one case. In another case, you are a consultant or implementation manager. In another case, you're kind of a supporting manager. And here, what you look at, for example, in the cooking. So when it comes to the cooking in the magazine, you have a different position if you're a cook than in the books. So you are putting, they have a magazine, they have books, they have internet, they have a different work there. So it's a matrix kind of, so if you look at, for example, wedding. In the wedding, when it's internet, on the internet is different than it's on the TV. So these are different activities that you do it in a matrix. And if you go to a hospital, and you might have 5 people or 6 people standing there, 2 doctors. Why would I have 2 doctors? Well, because one of them is in charge of doing certain thing. I don't know, whatever is the operation, and another is doing certain thing. But once they move to another operation room, you will see that the responsibility is changed according to the patient. So we use a lot matrix approach in the IT department. I mean, not in IT, in IT and consulting companies, we use a lot of matrix approach to in the hospitals and probably in sometimes in the high-end organizations. You're always going to see some kind of this matrix approach in according to the individual specialties. You would take a certain position. And in this case, you would notice that there is ongoing, these organizations who runs the Matrix way, they have ongoing lots of training is happening in that field. Now, what we're gonna do, we're gonna take a 10 minutes break. We'll come back at 2 o'clock to finish up this chapter, and probably we'll talk a little bit, introducing to you the next chapter, which is about the HR, probably no, we'll start it with the Oracle. I just wanted to introduce you to see how they are approaching the whole organization and the needs of the organization. It would be very, probably a little bit interesting. So I'll see you at 2 o'clock. Take a 10 minutes break and think about, I don't know, Subway that has now is not a sandwich, it's a sugars. So I'll see you guys. Okay, guys, we're back. I hope you had a good break. I did. I just got myself a tea, and that's a good thing about working online. Anytime you want, you can have a tea, coffee, or whatever. But it's hot. I remember during my education in the University of Winnipeg, I kind of got hooked to something called City Sub, not Subway. And it's Manitoban franchise, I think. It has like a Subway, but their bread was taste better because they purely used the Canadian wheat. And once the Canadian wheat, for some reason, tastes much better than the American wheat for making the bread and all these things. And that's the reason you see the Tim Horton. They use a Canadian wheat to make donuts, and it tastes better. So yeah, I mean, there that time I got hooked to the City Sub, but assume the City Sub, because it's a small franchise and it's a purely Canadian franchise, they use tuna and not in a lab produced tuna. So sometimes you stay away from franchises food or whatever. I don't know. I mean, like just feeling guilty of eating and now finding out that there's a tons of sugars in the 10% of it is a sugar in the bread. So that's probably reason I get really happy when I'm eating kind of I don't know, a kind of what's it called, the Subway. So, okay, so we will continue, and I'll just want to show you a short video, and then we will continue with the chapter. As this is about a beer factory, something I don't drink beer anymore. Okay, so we'll see this, and then we'll continue finishing up the chapter, and then we will probably speak more about the Oracle if we have time.
Who wants to come to work every day just to make money for somebody else, which is ultimately what most people do. I know, or how can you really care?
I was pretty convinced that I wanted to open the books to our coworkers.
Opening up the books to employees involved educating them on what the financial statements meant and sharing ownership.
We have tried to make our relationship with our coworkers in terms of the business of running the business very transparent, and I think that's another kind of foundational piece of who we are. It's bringing yourself to work each day in a loving mind frame, extending yourself to people, laughing, making sure that, you know, that work is a happy place.
Does this fit your impression of most companies that you know of? Probably not. That's because the owners of this company, Jeff Liebisch and Kim Jordan, decided early on what their values and goals were. Sure, overall the goal is to make a profit, but for Jeff and Kim, there's more to it. Having fun and allowing their employees to have fun with what they do is also important. They were able to visualize the far-reaching effects that this would have in the expansion of their business. By giving the employees a say in the overall company direction, the employees developed a vested interest in seeing the company progress further.
I started in homebrewing back in 1980. I had just moved to Golden from St. Louis and sharing a house with a guy who came home one day and said, "Hey, I heard you can make beer at home." And I looked at him and said, "I think you're crazy." But the next day we went out and bought some ingredients and made beer. And it was a semi-disaster and exploded and did all kinds of terrible things.
This hobby was put on the back burner shortly after that, but then Jeff, while on a family vacation in Belgium, discovered many new and exciting things about brewing beer the Belgian way. Jeff returned to Colorado and picked up his hobby once again. By utilizing ingredients that are not common in most beer breweries, like the Belgians, Jeff was able to create a variety of beers unlike most in the U.S. These creations were quickly becoming popular with family, friends, and locals. Eventually, his efforts erupted into a full-fledged brewery, the New Belgium Brewery, now located in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Banks would not give us business loans, and we weren't particularly interested in taking on business partners. So I came up with a design to put the brewing operation in the basement of our house. Because of the low capital investment, that we were able to concentrate on making quality, somewhat esoteric beers and not needing to look for a high volume wide market in order to make the business somewhat profitable.
When we first started the brewery in the basement of our house, for starters, we didn't have any sense that what we were doing then would turn out to be this now. Jeff and I quickly realized as we became more and more successful that if we were going to have a life and be able to go on vacation together, that we needed to have someone help us run the business.
So I contacted them and said, you know, I just want to learn the business. I'm willing to work for free. Will you put me to work? And Jeff said yes. As a matter of fact, we could use some help bottling. I'd carry empty cases down the basement and then carry full ones back up on the return trip. When I started, 60 cases was a bottling shift.
Jump forward to the present, and from these small beginnings, a vast company has developed.
We just rolled with it, and we listened to our customers. We responded to what they wanted, and they wanted more beer, and that was intoxicating, so to speak, feeling to have people saying, "We really want your beer. Can you make more beer and send it to us?"
As New Belgium began to produce more beer, they needed to bring additional employees on board. In doing this, an organizational culture for the company began to form. Organizational culture is a firm's shared values, beliefs, traditions, philosophies, rules, and role models for behavior. This structure of organization directly affects the business's costs and efficiency. While on a hike in Colorado, they discussed the principles that were important for them in business, and from this, they developed the New Belgium's core values and beliefs.
When I first started working here, in the first couple of years, There's a classic environment where you have to try and remember to put the financials away before you went home for the night and not leave financial information on the copier and things like that. In '95, Kim realized that in order to further the culture that she wanted, that employees had to be involved with all aspects of the business, and that included the financial aspects. So Kim and I went to a few conferences, read a few books, and started Open Book Management in 1996.
Open Book Management is primarily a way of running the company where employees have access to financial information. We train people to be financially literate, because it's my belief, and I think most open book management practitioners would agree, that you can't just hand people the books, because people need to know, what does that mean?
The biggest changes in the brewery for me were the open book management, even more so than the ownership of the company. Once Kim and Jeff decided to let us all know where everything was going, it made it real important for us to keep count of every keg, any cases that are damaged. You know, it all adds up.
This was our initial foray into somehow making a statement that that we understand that it takes more than Jeff and I to get beer out the door, and that it's important that we share in all of that benefit, and frankly the risk too. You know, it's important that employee owners are thinking about the benefit and about, you know, investing for the future and about risk, and that it's a very real experience.
From this culture, an organizational structure developed. Structure is the arrangement or relationship of positions within an organization. New Belgium breaks its operations down into departments which then focus on particular issues within the company. For instance, the Wastewater Management Department deals specifically with water reclamation, whereas the Quality Assurance Department looks mainly at the standards associated with the product being produced.
QA is responsible for overseeing the quality of the beer, and we're also responsible for making sure that the beer stays clean all through the process. We're a self-managed group, and what that means is it's kind of a flat structure to a certain extent. We do report certain things to people that need our results, but as far as the structure of our department goes, we are all considered area leaders.
This leads us to look at the role that the degree of centralization plays in a company. In a centralized organization, authority is concentrated at the top and very little decision-making authority is delegated to lower levels. In a company like New Belgium Brewery, the decision-making authority is delegated as far down the chain of command as possible, which empowers its employees to make decisions without having to seek approval. For instance, in an area like quality assurance, this is important because if a change is needed, it can be implemented immediately before a batch of beer goes bad.
How can you really care about the certain small things that are necessary to be done day in and day out if you don't have a larger purpose behind them? And the larger purpose for us, I think, for me anyway, is to be a business role model, to be breaking new ground on what it can mean to operate exceptionally in the free market economy, while at the same time holding tight to very high ethical standards about who you want to be on the planet. Every decision we make is informed by our values.
The role of groups and teams and organizations vary from company to company. In work groups, employees are held individually accountable, even though they generally have a common goal. At New Belgium Brewery, however, the work done is a team effort in which everyone holds themselves mutually accountable. Employees are given part ownership in the company after 1 year's time, thereby creating an environment of employee owners and the desire for success for all involved.
We hear it a lot from customers, people who I'll run into and say, wow, I was at your brewery, and the vibe there is amazing. You can just tell that people really like being there, which for me is incredibly satisfying.
The change in management styles in companies throughout the United States and elsewhere is happening because the role of empowerment and culture is changing within the workplace. There are three things that greatly influence this change. First, employees' jobs have changed. The nature of work is changing to become more intellectual, and because of this, there's no one set way of doing things. The nature of management has also changed. It used to be that managers knew more about their jobs than employees did.
Today, it's typical for employees to know more about the specialization of their job than anyone else. And finally, the employment relationship has changed. It used to be that employees were most concerned about issues such as pay, job security, and the hours of work. But now, they want to be more fully engaged in their work by problem solving and decision making. For Jeff and Kim at New Belgium Brewery, the bottom line is that it always comes down to open communication.
And I think that combination of happiness and extending yourself to have real relationships with people and being excellent here at New Belgium really creates a magical vibe.
Okay. While I was watching this movie, I mean this educational movie, and like it suddenly came in my mind. I don't know if anybody saw this movie, very old one. It's called the Shawshank Redemption. Anybody saw that? Shawshank
Yes,
Redemption.
Professor. That's an
Yeah,
awesome movie, you know.
yeah, it's a beautiful movie. But you know what it came in my mind? You remember when Red, the friend of, the black Morgan, his name Morgan, um, he left the jail and he started working in a supermarket and was every 5-10 minutes or whatever, he raised his hand to the supervisor, says, "Can I go to the washroom?" And then he comes to him and says, "Oh, you don't need to, if you have to go to the washroom, just go. Don't need to ask me." And the reason is, now I'm thinking of it, is, yeah, Morgan Freeman, is the fact that the level of authority has changed. Is, in the jail, there is kind of a, authority is different than in supermarkets, for example. And Morgan Freeman, that's the reason, because he's moved from a different working culture to a different, or a living culture, or working, because he was in jail, to a working culture that is different. And you would think that is also only in the movie, in the Shawshank Redemption, which is a beautiful movie. I've read the novel and then I watch the movie. And actually, I do that. I read the novel first and then I watch the movie, because I want to see my imagination how far from the movie. But that part was really interesting, because it might happen also for many of us who is, coming from a different working culture and joining a different working culture and says, "What? We don't have to sign in and sign out." And this happens to me first time when I start working for a company that there is no sign in and no sign out, and it's a project base. And they tell you you need to stay from 9 o'clock to 5, but anytime you want to leave, or you take a nap, or you go exercise or go for lunch, it doesn't matter. You can do that. It's like, okay, so we're free, no sign in, no sign out. Now, time comes in, and we're supposed to leave at 4 o'clock traditionally, and I raise my head and I see everybody sitting at work. So they're there. 5 comes in, still people there. 6 comes in, and because I'm a new, I feel insecure to leave at 4, because if nobody's leaving, why should I leave? And at 6 o'clock p.m., people start going out one by one. Slowly they are moving. And then I come on weekend, because I'm a new one, trying to work on weekend time, and I see people there. And they don't getting overpaid or anything, but they are working, because the working cultural environment is kind of a flat. You make your decision, you put your project, and you go ahead and do it. And I'm talking about 30 years ago. That's something, it was an eye-opening for any organization. And then I said, okay, since there is no sign in and no sign out, why I don't work from my vacation? So I packed up my stuff and I went to a small island in the middle of the ocean, and I started working from there. And my boss called me and we had a project. It's about IBM, and we have to upgrade it. And he was asking me things, how the project is going on. I said, well, the consultants are getting upgraded, getting trained. The hardware is being shipped from UK, all these things. And, the software is shipping from France, actually, for the IBM. And the clients are getting trained for the new upgrade version. Well, we went explaining, and he's asking, and we discussion regularly. And he said, listen, Faisal, I want to see you. I said, no, you cannot. He said, why? I said, well, I'm in a small island in the middle of the ocean between Malaysia and Thailand, there, working from there. And at that time, I felt that, okay, it's nice to work virtually or, through collaboration and all these things. But that's what makes the culture is being changing. And all of us, we need to adjust to it. But the funny thing is about Shawshank Redemption is the fact that when they asked Morgan, how come your name is Red? He said, because my background is Irish. That was also a funny thing. Anyway, so I guess you guys saw that when we went, he goes to the, every 5 minutes asking to go to the washroom. And they tell him, you don't need to request that. This was kind of, okay. So let's finish up the chapter and then we'll take it from there. And last time, before the break, we spoke about matrix and how the matrix works. We'll continue. Not a pure project, it's called a matrix project. And if you look at here, let's look at the person who's in charge of cooking, for example, or a group of cooking. In the same time, he is working within the magazines, works with the books, works with the internet, radio and newspaper, and network cable. And in each position is differently done. If we look at, for example, home, it has done according to the position he is in. So it might be internet and a home. So that's what we call a matrix approach. That's a lot is done in the, once again, IT companies and also hospitals and the legal department. Usually the professional, high-end professionals organization do a lot of matrix organization. They are, especially the ones into the high-end services. Now, there is something which is we all being, what do you call international organization, which is designed to help a company succeed in the international market. Most of the companies operating, big companies operating in Canada, some kind of an international company. International department and division integrate global organization. Now, there is a different approach when it comes to the IT solution. And we can bring an example of the CRM for Ford versus the CRM for BMW. They have a different approach for their CRM, and because it's meeting the way they operate internationally. Now, just to let you know, like for example, if you look at the CRM, the way BMW runs it, compared to the CRM, the way the Ford runs it. Now, once you have a lead in BMW, the headquarters is aware of it. And if the lead is located close to your reseller location, then you have that lead. But if it's moved somewhere else, they get the address and everything, then the other company gets that lead and you will have only a share. So it kind of all these branches working on creating lead, and whomever reach that, get that lead, it's close to the person's home. Now, so there is a kind of a pool of leads that generated by the all organizations, the reseller organization of BMW. On other hand, and they share this CRM application with everybody, and all these distributions can see that. On other hand, Ford has a different way of doing it and says, okay, we will give you access to our CRM, centralized, but if you generate the lead, it belongs to you. The other distribution cannot see it. And you are in a control of delivering the sales and closing the sales and marketing to these, and you just ask us for any kind of support. So what they do in the Ford is it's given autonomous in utilizing the CRM and marketing campaign and the sales, utilizing the centralized application for the CRM that provided by Ford. On a BMW case, says no, there is no autonomous, all of us together on that, and all the leads can be supported by other distributors also. And if somebody generate that lead locally through his work and he enter it, then, and if it's not close to his distribution, it will go to the other distributor, but he will get some share of it. So it is depend on the organizational culture and organizational belief, is even with the application that's supposed to be running. Okay. So the chief executive officer, he is the manager or the superior for the retail division, say A, retail division B, and the international division. And under the international division, you might have the Asia, Europe, and Latin America and Africa, for example. There are different divisions. And we see that, for example, for many large companies. And probably what's been happening is there is organizational design are changing for the 21st centuries. And these type are kind of a boundaryless or boundary net organization, because the telecommunication and collaboration tools, it's a team organization. It could be a virtual and you don't own anything, and could be a learning organization. And as example of virtual organization, you might have the core organization and the rest in the Asia. You contracted manufacturing in Asia, and you also contracted your administrative in services. You can contract sales and marketing, distribution, and logistics. So that could be also done in a way, can be very useful. Probably what you call, there is something called transactional theories, who believes in such an approach for this system. Now, there is, when we said there is a formal organization and there is informal organization. I remember that when the first time Oracle bought Hyperion, which is the CRM application for large companies, mid-sized to large companies, mostly large companies, Hyperion is used. For mid-sized to smaller, probably you have the CX CRM, something like that, Oracle CX CRM. But the Hyperion is geared toward big companies. So we went for a boot camp in Dubai for 2 weeks, and we had this two consultants from Hyperion come in and explaining the products for us, and hands-on experience. It's a boot camp. But the problem with the guy was one of them kept saying, bringing the example of BMW, but he kept saying it BMW. And all of us saying, what kind of company this BMW? And we went for a week not knowing the company's BMW. That must be a different company that we never heard of. And then I told him, I said, where is this BMW company? He goes, in Germany. Don't you have this cars of BMW? I said, oh, okay, you mean BMW. Well, it's actually the original name is a BMW, it's not BMW, probably. So we went for a week. He's explaining Hyperion and brings in examples of BMW, and we were going, okay. So he was presenting that as a, centralized CRM application and how you customize it as a centralized application. Anyway, so back to the subject of the informal organization. And this is a pretty much interesting subject. You might have your buddy at your work sitting in your office, and you are, let's say, in the purchasing department. But he's a good friend with the operations GM, and a friend with the cleaning janitor. There are three good friends, and that's kind of an informal organization. So your request might go through formal or informal. So that's pretty much when you go there, there is a formal setup of organization, and look for the informal ones also. It can help you. Informal organization, it's the network of social interaction and relationship among employees unrelated to a formal structure. It is a powerful source that can alter the formal structures, informal group, organization, and career plan. These are two kinds. Probably you wonder is how important that informal organization, group or something. And this is one of the things that we're contributing for male to reach to the C level or VP level, and kind of slowing down females to reach to the, and still probably there is some effect of it, by the way. And the woman couldn't make it to the VP level in North America because simply in that time, women did not play golf, or they didn't like playing golf. Now thanks God, they are playing golf now. But lots of decisions, it's made in playing golf. And the male got together on a playing golf ground, and they made decision and promoted people. And usually, what they promote their friends who plays golf with them. It's the same thing applicable in baseball, same thing applicable in football. There is kind of the informal approach that influenced some of the decision. And in that time, women were out of these clubs, put it this way, and that slowed them down in the promotion, decision making, and lots of these effects. And in the informal group is a group of individuals who decide to interact among themselves, even though they are not required to do so. And probably you are interacting now with other classes that is not required for you to do that. And it's about, you may work together or not, may discuss business of other interest, or may not have a positive impact on the business. And that's need to be monitored by the management if you might have these informal group might have some kind of a negative impact on the business, such as a rumor groups or gossip group sometimes they call it. And the gossip group is could be a very negative. Now, the grapevine organizational is an informal communication network that carry gossip and other information. In this case, manager must maintain open channel of communication and respond to inaccurate information to minimize these damages. And manager can use it to measure employee reaction also, gain information and improve the decision. So it could be a tool that dangerous for the organization and could be also beneficial in a way. Now, before we start, we kind of reached to the end of the chapter. We will kind of review these and refresh your mind on the points that we discussed it. Back to probably anybody can tell me the biggest competition for Hyperion CRM today? Something called Salesforce. Anyway, they are kind of a tier one, by the way, application. Now let's check the questions and see if what's your answers here. Please participate in it. As I said, you make mistakes, that's okay. It's countable, your participation is not the right or wrong. Let's do a quick check in the end of the chapter. So the organizational chart illustrate which one? Guys, anybody? Organizational chart illustrate position of seniority with an organization. I'm just gonna check it. Oh, C. Yeah, wow. Thank you, Benny. Position of seniority within an organization. Thank you, Vishi. Only those reporting relationship between middle management and top management. C is organizational structure, employees, titles, and their relationship to one another, or operational plan. Which one you think the organizational chart illustrate? I think you did already, to one another, which is a C. Thank you very much. Wonderful answer. The next question, specializations permits higher level of productivities through the efficiency gain. However, a potential risk of excessive specialization could be a higher training cost, employee boredom, dissatisfaction and isolation, higher wage rate and to compensate the poor working conditions, or excessive product defects. Guys, your answer? Just guess. Don't worry about it if it's wrong. A. I have NA. Let's see. Let's see, Benny, if it has 2 for 2 or not. Which one? The answer you think? Let's see who else is doing. Oh, the answer is B. That's okay. That's okay. There might be bored, dissatisfied, and isolation. You see, when you're training people and you specialize them, and I think I said it in the beginning of the class, is he's going to do this subject and this is why I advised you to work for a mid-sized to small-sized companies where you have more skills. You're going to gain more skills, and then you will be busy of learning, because learning is important for a person. So you might be very much, if you are working in a large company, you might be kind of an isolated or just doing one thing. I remember there was one guy who is in charge of just stamping things. His job is just put a stamp, and that's the most dissatisfying thing, because all he does for 8 o'clock, you bring him the papers and he stamp it. So what else you do? And that's cause really, dissatisfaction. And the only thing he can do is he stays on his mobile, looking at his mobile, and you bring the paper and just, okay, take your paper. Next one, okay, take your paper. And that's what he's doing, because that's a dissatisfying thing. But thank you for your try. It's good. I really, appreciate that. But why is A wrong? Yes, it's a higher training cost, but the issues, it is saying specializing high cost of productivity through the efficiency gaining. However, the potential risk, the risk which is there, it's true there is a higher cost, but a higher cost does not mean higher risk. But the higher risk is the employee dissatisfied, probably he resigned, he quit, and he's not happy. He's not producing better, because it's saying potential risk, and it's not saying, a higher cost. Higher cost does not sometimes, it's risky. But thank you for your comment and your answer.
And we saw that in lots of some car manufacturers.
It's my pleasure.
If you don't switch their job.
Very good job, Benny.
Now,
Karam,
a company that emphasize superior customer service need to respond quickly to satisfy customers. They are likely using what?
guys, don't worry. You give wrong answer, you're okay. I got 2 answers. C, decentralization. Yeah, yes. Thank you, Azza. Thank you, Karam. Decentralized decision, exactly.
Line of authority, centralized decision-making, decentralized decision-making, or functional authority.
And why?
Decentralized decision-making.
And here I brought the example of DSS, because you need to decentralize or give the impression of decentralized, because once you are working in a company, there is decision that you have to make as a front end, probably, and you need the support. In DSS, in this case, if it's a varieties of decisions, it's good to have a DSS that guide you. And a DSS, as we said, and one of our colleagues explained that, is the fact it's an application help you to make a decision.
Explain why that. Let's assume this case says beta engineering use the what corporate structure where the teams of specialized from various function area work together on a specific and report both to a project manager and line managers. What's your answer?
Okay, guys. What's your answer? Here's the, and I will answer it for you this time. There's a small trick here, both project manager and line manager. And when do we usually have a project and a line manager together working? Matrix, exactly. Thank you very much, Karam.
There is a hint here. Matrix. Anytime you see that line manager and project manager working on a certain project, that's a matrix, and it's over whenever it's finished, due date. Okay, so the in what is an informal person-to-person means of communication, information, and or rumors, and we just said it in the last, right?
Okay.
That one. Okay.
Exactly. The gossip center.
Thank you for your time. Okay.
Okay. So the gossip center is usually there's lots of gossips happen in the companies, and I try to stay away from it, and I don't believe it sometimes. I don't. And you always find a guy or a girl who is getting the information, the center of information, and probably she might sometimes she can make up these informations too. Now, um, probably what we're gonna do, we're gonna go very quickly over looking at the Oracle HRMS and see how they are approaching the organization and managing the taking things into consideration. So I'm just gonna um, probably find the thing for you here. Yeah, in just a second here. Guys, you're doing wonderful job so far. Now, here's probably, I thought it's good that I bring you kind of our presentation that we used to use in the companies, just to look at it. Now, I think then there is an upgraded system now, but this part of the HR did not change that much. And it's a human resource management, which is release 12. In here, where we are going to talk, we can get about what's the core of HR, how much you can do the self-service. There is things in HR like payroll, learning management, time and labor, HR intelligence, recruitment, and these issues. Now, if we look at probably the core of HR, it's a component of core a human resource management system. And when you're looking at the system, they need to take into considerations like recruitment, hiring and deployment, career management. Is when you're hiring somebody, he wants to move up with an organization, something like a training and development, something with like a compensation and benefit. If you are undercompensated or you get less benefit, you might be quitting. The time and labor is pretty much interesting. And, especially we have what you have in the weekend, how much you're supposed to get per hour during the weekdays, how much you're supposed to get, what about in the holidays? And the payroll processing. And the last thing is the organization and resource planning. So you need to look at the organization, how it's set up, and the resource planning. Now, and all this comes in under their also responsibility, because managing the employee, it's the both responsibilities, the line manager or your supervisor in the HR department. So they are in charge of looking at the development of retention. So you need to develop the employee, but as we said, not very up to a point that becomes a one-task person and gets bored too. And the second, you need to create some kind of a motivation. And if you have the employee, if your organization works in the global, that makes it more difficult. How you're going to pay, and the cost control or cost allocation. As I brought you the example, I was working for the region of Kuwait, for the South region, and suddenly there is an expansion, and that expansion under the Levant region, and allocation of cost, how it's this happening. Now, the big challenge is happening is the effective communication. How do you communicate with the employee, the extended people management? How are you going to manage these different level of management, and how you optimize your workforce, how you get the maximum works from them, and the consistency on
on one system, that the information, that's all the IT companies talks about that. Everything should be, the consistent. Now, look at this workforce. So you have this person, poor guy, which is assigned in France by a boss in Japan. Okay, so by a boss in Japan, assigned in France, and he's from USA, working for a Switzerland bank. Now, how he's going to get paid? How he's going to get holidays? Is he following the US laws or Switzerland laws or the Japanese laws? The family covered by USA benefits, or which benefits? So these are all complicated managing a workforce globally. So there is a plan, which is a business plan, succession plan, a gap analysis, a curriculum development, and sustainable matches. And all these should be instructed. And there is a measures of when you provide the training or he's performing, and there is supposed to be a monitor, like a self-management monitor, employee monitor. And according to these measures, you keep training them, and you have to give them a kind of a reward, a deploy, and a promotion. And that gets really complicated. So besides that, what you're looking for, you're looking to reduce the management. See, when you say reduce the HR administrative cost, you're talking about reducing the HR as an HR cost and the supervisor. So the supervisor can manage 5 people instead of 2 people if you give him some kind of tools that he can do. So also the thing is like the strategic role for HR with a focus on a value added activities. So the administration or your supervisor should look at your value added in that where you can also allocate some benefits, rewards. Once again, improve the data. And next class, we'll talk a lot about job delegation and job empowerment. And that can be done through self-service. Although having a DSS help you to make that decision, but the DSS itself does not make a decision. So if you're in the front, you don't need to go to your supervisor every 5 minutes to ask him, because this makes you look bad to the end user, to your customer, and makes you feel less empowered. So they're trying to empowerment. And how would you do a workforce optimization achieved? So the whole goal is really putting the right people at the right job at the right time for the right cost. So we have 4 things: right people, right job, right time, and the right cost, and balance between them. That's the work optimization. And doing the work optimization is you have to balance all these 4. And to do that, I probably now, if you look at it, is like we spoke about it in the earlier, the core issues of management or HR is the human resource, there's a payroll, there's a time and labor, there is a learning management, curriculum and advanced benefit, and they have to be on the certain database with a certain, if there is necessary extension, as we did as an extension, we called it a Middle East extension as a PR application. But overall, there should be a business intelligence where you can drive the data from it, and a crystal reporting can help also. Now, so an integrated of HR solution is must, where the executive can have an extra windows on to make an ESS decision, but in the same time, we should have some kind of an integrated between the managers, employees, executives. These are on the top, and then you have the whole payroll guys, the recruiting guys, because the recruiting might be have to recruit the new people according to their what they see as an expansion or according to the line manager request. Now, when he gets recruited, there would be a process of training and development, and then building the career management. And also they have to estimate a standard compensation, because you cannot give this person, because you like him, more than another person. If they find out this, they might not be very happy. Now, when it comes to a career management, that comes involved in it, it's something called competency management. Now, you want to tell me the competency management is ability to deliver these stuff. But wait a second, there is different competency management. Well, what do you mean different competency management? Well, I can tell you, sometimes you are looking at somebody, and this person, you want to put him in a certain position. So what do? You look at this person and what kind of a training and exposures and experience needs to reach to that position. And you allocate the gap and you deliver the training development. So by person. So Faisal, I want him to be a manager in that region, in that country. I have to provide him this training because he's going to that region. That's one way. The second way, it's when you're saying, okay, I need a manager, and let's look at the whole team that I have there who might be a managers. And then the system will be looking at all of them and find the smallest gap between what is needed as a manager and that person. And this person will be successor to get trained, because now you have a smaller gap and you can provide less training than Faisal. That's another way of approaching it. And the third way of approaching it is the fact sometimes, and we have it here and in USA, we have what you call the quota, the visible minority quota, for example. So any organization needs to hire certain visible minority within the company. Now in USA, what they have a different quota, and they call it the management quota. And certain percentage of the management should be coming from visible minority or the disabled or whatever, according to the government rule. Now, if they don't meet that part of it, they have two options. One option that they can apply and saying, we will do that within a few years and gets approval, or they go and find within the organization who is the visible minority or who is disabled and move to the management level and provide them that training. So that's a three-way of looking at the competencies. So a private company, why they have to meet that requirement? Because simply these company cannot get a contract from the government if they don't meet that quota. Now, there is other things comes in when it comes in, that equity versus equalities also, which makes it more complicated when you look at it. So the competency-driven enterprise needs to look at all these. So the more competent, the more you pay the payroll better. How you recruit it according to the competency. What you training? These are levels is according to a person or personnel or certain level. And then you create their career and says how these things get processed. And that should be synchronized with your supervisor or line manager. and he is supposed to help you. So the whole issues here is not a, very, as you put it, simple, straightforward. Now, also you need to be integrated with the financial. So you might have an Oracle financial or whatever you have, and to the general ledgers, to the, which is, and position, job position, employee position, job, as we said, and also there was what you pay. Maybe you got paying as a, I don't know, payrolls and probably other things that involve with it. Now, when you're getting an employee, there's some assets that he needs to. Today, they're making it easier by using Boyd, bring your own devices, but still you have to make things available for him to run. So what do we have here? We have something called accounting controls. We have the head count control and budget. How many employees do I need? Should I hire a dozen or 2 dozens? And how much its cost will be, taken by these people. And then you set up what you call the approval for hierarchies. So you put the tasks, you design the task, you give the authority, and you have the approvals, and you run a cost assignment to these group, for example, or new branches, and the accountabilities, who's accounted, has an accountability to deliver these in it. Plus, you might need to do some security controls, and also you do the tracking, asset tracking also. So it's not a straightforward, it's much more complicated. Now, but in a complete recruitment administration, if we look at the cycle of it, so there is a data details, application details, which is a web page job post. Now, which takes me to a different thing. I told you about informational authorities. And guys, this is my advice to you. Go on LinkedIn, meet people on LinkedIn, create your informational authority, ability to develop information, to publish information, or republish the information. That's called, information. So the other people who is in LinkedIn with you can see you are very active. Now, once you see a job that you like in a market, look at what do they post and the specification that they look. Now, you need to change the wording. I'm not saying lying, wording. You change it according to the post specification. Exactly. So if you worked in a McDonald's, and you said, I worked in McDonald's, you better change it, and they're looking for a service, you change it to a service, okay? Because it's a service. And the reason, because there is a screen out application running according to the specification that they put. So once you have the matching word, say 60, 70% of it would pass to the HR or to the line manager. And that's on the site. Now, you know where did you apply, and you have some management or probably in your LinkedIn, and contact them and start setting up saying, okay, I applied for this. And that's a quick way and a better way to access to this. But back to the subject. So you have application and you have the web page, and the application information comes in. And then what you have, recruitment activities, people are going out, or the HR start looking at it, or yeah, it's the HR mostly, and then they pass it to the line managers, and then matching the requisition and details. All these will be involved in a selection process. I told you in the beginning, there is some kind of a screening process, automated screening process. Once they don't see this matching word, they will screen you out. And you cannot do anything about it, because there might be 1,000 people applying, and just because you have a matching word,
your application being forwarded automatically to the HR, or you get an email automatically saying, well, keep your CV or your resume for the future. And then you're going to meet in the process of that, and applicant hired. Once it gets hired, there is more data being stored. Need to provide more data, and then the training, the salaries, the compensation will adjust. Now, the training and salaries can be set up automatically by entering your data. It will give you exactly what's your salary range. So the whole issue comes in here is kind of the accurate cost control, the monitor and contain costs through a budget cycle that it's needed to be tracked. Now, is there any question? Okay, wonderful. So there is what you call the responsibilities. Suddenly you hired somebody and you delegate some responsibility and authorities, and you attach that to these responsibilities and authorities. I'm not going to go details on this because there is what you call SSHR and HR system and the menus. But when it comes to probably managing your work improvement, say, put it this way, or something, promotion. So if you are being hired, there is certain issues that you need to meet, such as you notice there is an evaluation, yearly evaluation by supervisor, by HR, by colleague, all these things, and that can promote you, help you to be promoted. And you might be, during the life working, you might be relocated. And that's all the adjustments kind of needed. And probably once you're relocated, again, you might be promoted or fired or whatever. But today, what's happened to you, you are here today. So that's all these process need to be managed pretty well and historically should be delivered. Now, what makes it worse is the fact what you have is you have a global setup. So there is a multiple legislation you have to manage. There's multi-locations, multi-currencies, and that's especially also in Europe, in North America, and you have to have a kind of a truly global data definition and structures, as simple as the flexible of address and the name format. So here, probably when you use postal code, you have to put a space between the first three letter and the next three letter. But the postal code that you in a state, you don't put a space. The phone numbers, the whole flexibility of your, could have more banks account. And that all should be into your applicable in system and different language. So probably in India, you would not have this issue because you can use the English and the system is made in English. But if you go to Middle East, it has to be Arabized. South America, it has to be Latin. I'm not going to say Spanish, although Mexico, they call it Spanish, the others call it Latin. And all these adjustments needed to be done. What we're going to do, we're probably going to stop here about the, wait a second. Let's see if you have any question. Otherwise, I'm open for any question from you. And in the next class, we will continue talking about how Oracle built these applications to meet the requirement and the structure of the companies and the options are there, And then we will talk more about, chapter 8, which is more about the system itself, the management itself. Okay, so let me know if you have any question, guys. Otherwise, I'll be glad to answer it for you. If you don't have any question, feel free to leave, guys. I'll see you next class. And by the way, it's been published for you. See you.